is up? Welcome back to the Chandler edition of your Avenger League preview. Big shout out to John last week for filling in my absence, and a big apology to all of the faithful listeners, all 9 of you out there that tune in every single week and listen to bad analysis of all of our fantasy teams from objectively the worst fantasy player in our league this year. So real dumb on your guys' part to listen to the information I'm providing you. Seeing as the performance this year has been a little less than optimal, is I guess a polite way to put it. Obviously, the normal way that we do this, there's no rankings to get into. It's playoff season. It's put up or shut up. So rankings aren't a thing anymore. Even in the consolation bracket where they kind of are, it's all about who you're playing, when you're playing, and you got to go out there and you got to win. So a quick rundown of the matchups. Obviously, we have our two important semifinal matchups. The week 2 kind of finale here between Tim and Raleigh, and Charlie and Andrew. And then we're going to get into after that, right back into our consolation bracket, which, I'll break down the games and how, I think they'll play out. But looking at the scoreboard here, I'm going to go over this real quick before I jump into the games. Doing that right after I said I'm not going to do the rankings. Here's the rankings. Wade leading the pack, our 1 seed so far. We have the 3 winners, Wade, John, and Trevor, and the 3 losers, Cameron, Ashley, and myself, in descending point order, so descending seed order. Wade and John both kind of eliminated themselves from having to play for last place last week. Their point differentials are so insane, especially Wade up at 142. He would have to be outscored by 2 of Cameron, myself, and Ashley by 42 by Cameron, 62 by Ashley. Oh my God, 80 by me in this week to get knocked back down into the duck match. John kind of in a similar boat. Would have to take a loss and get beat by 22 by Cameron, about 41 from Ashley, and then 60 from me. So both of them kind of safely eliminated. Trevor pretty safe. There is some wiggle room here for him to get knocked in. He's at 106.9 versus 181 and 68 by myself. I'm not catching anybody, so you can probably just go ahead and write me in the last place matchup. I guess I in theory could outscore Ashley by 13 and get bumped up to the 5 seed in this whole thing, but the result's the same. Maybe just who I'm playing is a little bit different, but even with the win here, unless Cameron and Ashley both lose, which I guess anything is possible. But anyway, we'll break that down a little bit more when we get into it. Let's start with the games that mean something here. Mean something more than not getting a tattoo. We'll start with Raleigh and Tim. Raleigh comes in with a 6-point advantage. It's like 5.8. We'll round it up to a 6-point advantage, which doesn't really sound like a lot. But I kind of personally feel like last week was Tim's week to make some headway. When you talk about D-Hop being limited, Hunter Henry getting under 10 points, Mike Evans being bad, and he kind of failed to really create the separation that he needed. And a lot of Kirk Cousins hurt with that. The guy threw for 402 yards against the Lions. Zeke got the Texans matchup, and he took decent advantage of that. Dalvin Cook was limited by the Lions for some reason somehow, which doesn't make sense. Both of their defenses stunk. In fact, the whole debate between the Raiders defense and the Cardinals defense. Cardinals put up 3 points. What did the Raiders, I believe, had more? Would be the just quick, easy way of putting it. Just stalling as I pull up the score here. Against the Chargers, they had against the Rams, yikes, had 7 points. So that literally would have cut the lead in half had he gone that route. Not a huge difference, but every point matters in these weeks. So that's kind of how the first match went. Now Tim does get some benefit here of getting some favorable matchups. And Riley does too, but it's not really from his big time star players. So first off, we get Josh Allen against the Dolphins. The only thing that worries me there is the snow and the lake effect that is about to hit Buffalo again. A lot has been made about what that's going to do to Miami's offense. The Bills, obviously, they live there. They're kind of used to the cold, kind of used to the snow, but it still affects your offense no matter who you are. And if that turns into a low-scoring slugfest, Josh Allen hasn't had the most incredible stretch here. By Josh Allen, fantasy point standards anyway, and in real standards, he's been pretty not good over the past 5 or 6 weeks. He had the one good Thanksgiving day against Detroit, but everybody puts up points on Detroit. The only thing that's really kept him in the mix here and kept him afloat is the rushing upside, the rushing touchdowns. He's good for one of those every couple weeks or so. But then you get into his running backs. Dalvin Cook gets the Colts. Good defense, tough matchup. They're playing hard with Jeff Saturday. Benefit here is that their defense kind of relies on their secondary. The secondary is really good. The run defense is not incredible, but you still have to deal with Justin Jefferson eating up touches, and that's something that really no one wants to see. Austin Eckler against the Titans, kind of in the same boat, honestly. Titans really, really good run defense, top 5 run defense. Secondary is abysmal. I mean, we saw them get lit up by I'm not gonna spoil it, but we saw them get lit up last week by a certain tight end that may or may not have been on the waiver wires on his way to 32 points. Having said that, I mean, Eckler's not really doing things with his rushing production. I mean, the last 5 weeks, 17, 19, 10, 20. Sorry, that was the last 4 weeks. I just can't count. In those games, his rushing yards 45, 35, 20, and then 83 against Kansas City. Almost all of that's coming through receptions, receiving touchdowns, receiving yardage, chunk plays like that. He's Justin Herbert's favorite target, which that may change a little bit with Williams and Allen finally back in the lineup and healthy. But Austin Eckler, I mean, he's the one running back that may be exempt from playing a good rush defense because he's not running, he's not doing, he's not taking handoffs in the backfield nearly as often as say a Dalvin Cook or a Zeke or an Aaron Jones on the other side. Speaking of the other side, we do have Aaron Jones playing the Rams, who, as bad as they are, the defense is still above average to solid. Still a decent run defense. Number 5 against running backs. So they are a little bit limiting there, and the Packers fucking stink. They can't stretch the field. They can't do anything. Christian Watson's awesome, but that's about it. The one running back matchup here that's really interesting is Zeke against the Jaguars. Derrick Henry had 100 yards in the first quarter. This past week, or he had 96. He ended with like 120. I think the Titans, the game kind of got out of hand. They had to throw the ball, and you don't trust Ryan Tannehill to throw the ball. I don't think that happens with the Cowboys. Obviously Dak can throw the ball, can throw you into a game. They have weapons, they have wide receivers. So I don't think we end up in one of these situations where they're asking Dak to throw the ball 30 to 35 times because they're down 2 scores and halfway through the third quarter. So I do think Zeke still gets his production here. We've been asking the question all year, or at least the last half of the year, should you start Tony, should you start Zeke, which one's better, which one's going to get points? Turns out the answer is just both. Just start them both. If you can figure it out and stack them, do it. That game is actually played on Monday night. Didn't realize that. We get the Rams and the Packers. Oh, I did know that because in the beginning of the year, everybody looked at it and was like, "Oh, that's gonna be fucking awesome." Now it's just sad. Now it's just real sad. Packers and Rams. Which I realized I just talked about after I was talking about Zeke. So just whatever. We're making do. Also, a little quick side note here. First week of Saturday games, so that's exciting. Make sure to check your lineups Friday after checking them on Thursday, and then check them again on Sunday, and then one more time for good measure on Monday, and then go ahead and check it on Tuesday to make sure everything worked out okay. Getting into the wide receivers here, DeAndre Hopkins with just a miserable matchup against the Broncos. I don't know how you don't start him. I mean, you have to start DeAndre Hopkins, but Colt McCoy is going to be throwing to him. He's playing the Broncos. That is going to be that right there is Tim's window into the finals, I believe. Because on the flip side for Raleigh, you have Jamar Chase against the Bucks, which and now Tyler Boyd, I believe, is still out. T. Higgins is still questionable, even though that apparently doesn't matter because they just bench him anyway. What's Tyler Boyd up to? Questionable. So a couple question marks on the other Bengals wide receivers. Big thing I see here, kind of going back into what I said about Zeke and the Cowboys. If the Bengals start blowing out the Bucks, I think we start getting a heavy dose of Mixon and Pirine early. So that's not to say Jamar Chase couldn't go for 150 and a touchdown in the first quarter, the first two quarters. I think he can. In fact, we've seen him do it. But if he doesn't get that production early, this game could start to get out of hand very, 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 very quickly. On the flip side, Juju Smith-Schuster against the Texans. Kind of the same idea. The problem with Juju isn't quite the player Jamar Chase is. He's got the better. Well, I was gonna say he's got the better quarterback, but 3-0. So kind of in the same boat. The problem is the Chiefs don't necessarily have a workhorse back. I mean, they have Pacheco, who is on the other side. Incredible matchup for Raleigh. So they have that sitting there, and they could start to feed him late. But they rely so much on Patrick Mahomes, even in the short quick game, that I don't think them blowing out the Texans affects Juju quite the same way that the Bengals blowing out the Bucks does. But once again, Jamar Chase can put up Juju's entire production in a quarter, and no one would bat an eye at it. Garrett Wilson against the Lions is a just incredible matchup. If Mike White's healthy to go, and obviously that limits a little bit of what Mike White's doing on the other side, that's just beautiful for Tim. I'm kind of talking myself into taking Tim. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Anyway, Garrett Wilson, he's been incredible the past couple weeks. A little bit limited against Buffalo, but that's Buffalo. And Mike White was injured most of that game. The week before against the Vikings, 162 yards. The week before that against the Bears. Both defenses that you can kind of put in the same boat as the Lions. 162 yards, 20 fantasy points, and against the Bears, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns, 23 fantasy points. Basically every game since Zach Wilson got benched, he's put up solid fantasy stats, had double-digit fantasy points in both games. 2 of those games going over 20. So he looks like he's found a home with Mike White, who we still got to see if he's healthy. I did see a report that they are not dressing, or they are dressing out Zach Wilson, and because Joe Flacco just doesn't want to play football anymore. So if Zach Wilson ends up in that game, this is just awful. Normally I don't really talk tight ends because they're kind of in the same boat for me as kickers and defenses, where they're so random. Unless they're Travis Kelce, they're so random that I don't really like to predict them. However, both of these tight ends are very interesting. Hunter Henry, last week, what did he do? He put up 70 yards. Mac Jones loves throwing the ball to him. They're playing a terrible defense in the Raiders. It kind of looked like at the end of that Monday night game that they started letting Mac kind of open up a little bit, throw the ball downfield, get rid of the quick passing stuff. So maybe Joe Judge and Matt Patricia figure something out there. I don't really trust them to, but either way, Hunter Henry is one of Mac Jones' favorite targets, so he eats up targets, and he's gonna put up reliable fantasy numbers most of the time. Evan Ingram on the other side, coming off of by far the best game of his career, 162 yards, 11 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 33.7 fantasy points, tight end 1, dropped by Riley the week of the game. Watched him in person just dismantle his entire day as he sat on the waiver wires and put up 0 points for anyone. Incredible. So obviously, as the number 1 tight end, Tim goes and picks him up, as has been noted as he does. The problem with Evan Ingram is he is not playing the Titans again. He's playing the Cowboys. who have a pulse on defense, have a pulse in the secondary, have a pulse at all. Whereas the Titans fucking stink out loud, real bad. I mean, so bad. I mean, just not good. So I don't foresee Evan Ingram coming even close to what he did last week. But I mean, you know, I don't, out of a tight end, you don't expect to rely on 33 points. So if he can go for 6, 7, 8 points, you know, that's a reliable week. But even looking at his point production totals by week this year, he's done that 3 times, 4 times. So taking a little bit of a shot there. Which, good luck with that. I talked about Isaiah Pacheco a little bit. Incredible matchup, especially if the game script starts going his way. He could just start eating carries, eating touches, eating yards. The Chiefs haven't really shown the ability to put a team away, you know, step on the throat and kill them. So that would worry me a little bit. We saw it last week with the Broncos, where all of a sudden the Chiefs couldn't do anything on offense. The Broncos are back in that game. So, you know, something to keep an eye on there. But the Texans, it can't be said how not good the Texans are. And then Brian Robinson in the flex for Tim. I get it. You know, you can't start Cordero Patterson at this point. Deontay Foreman has let you down a couple weeks in a row. Chuba Hubbard's taking over the backfield. Cam Akers, unreliable. Josh Palmer is you know, fucking boomer bust. Curtis Samuel is interesting, but kind of in the same boat. So you're kind of left here with a like an odd man out situation, just process of elimination that gets you to Brian Robinson. You assume he's going to touch the ball. You assume he's going to get there. The Giants, you know, aren't the worst defense in the world, so you know how much they limit him. Divisional game too, they usually get up for that. Kind of a playing game for their playoff picture. So like I said, it's the only option that you have. It's not my favorite option in the world, but you don't really have a better alternative. So, you know, I just say you hope he gets in the end zone, and that's it. But you're kind of doing the same thing with Isaiah Pacheco to a certain degree. Like I said, at the end of the game, he may just get some garbage time yards there. As far as this week, the website here has it projected 104 to 111 in favor of Tim, which would be enough for him to springboard over Riley's lead and make it into the finals of the playoffs. And like I said, I'm kind of talking myself into Tim here. I'm starting to do it, and a lot of it has to do with D-Hop playing the Broncos. I mean, that is just, there's so much potential for an egg to be laid right there. All the writings are on the wall. Colt McCoy's had his one good game this year. I really want to pick Tim, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pick Tim, and I think that may be the first. No, I did pick Trevor to beat him, so it's not the first time I picked against Raleigh. So we're going with Tim. Tim is going to take down Raleigh by more than 6 points and make his way into the Avenger League finals after not being above 5th in the rankings until week 14. Miraculous comeback, miraculous season. Whatever happens in this game, it's a miraculous season for Tim. So yeah, that's my prediction. Let's go find out who he's going to play according to the Champuter that I call my brain. So we have Andrew versus Charlie. A little bit of a lower scoring game compared to the one on the other side. Andrew has a 96.8 to 95.16 advantage. Super close game. Incredibly close. I mean, we even saw it, what was it, week 6 that they played each other? No, it was week 5, obviously. And by week 5, I mean it was week 4 that they played each other. And by week 4, I mean it was week 3. And when I said week 3, obviously I meant week 8. When the fuck did they play each other? Week 7? There it is, week 7. 116.46 to 116.34. Incredible point differential. I mean, it's so close. It could not be closer. It could, but like realistically, it could not. So just insane point differential from the 2 games they played so far this season. don't expect anything different here. We've got Jalen Hurts, your number one quarterback in fantasy, against Chicago. I didn't realize that game was happening. We get Jalen Hurts versus Justin Fields. That game is going to be the shit. Are you kidding me? I love that. The Eagles might put up 50 points. I take that back. Because they play the Cowboys on Christmas Eve. So, look ahead game. The letdown spot. Big time letdown spot here. Jalen Hurts, I trust his mindset and I trust his brain enough to not do that. So, that's good, but keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the letdown spot. Joe Burrow, I talked about him with when I talked about Jamar Chase. Has to get all of his production in the first half. Has to do it. I mean, has to come out of the first half 18 points or so. I think you're sitting comfortably because I think the second half is going to be just garbage time, milk the clock with who other than Joe Mixon sitting on the other side. Weird that the four teams have a lot of Bengals. It's a weird thing that the Bengals, Bills, and Chiefs are making up a lot of the teams here. It's almost like there's a correlation between who has good fantasy teams. Just making a mental note for next year that you pick good offenses, pick good players on good offenses. It's really not that hard. Fantasy's not a hard game, actually, when you really think about it. Let's look at the top 5 to 6 offenses. Let's pick the players on that team. Let's maybe don't pick Terry McLaurin in the 3rd round. Actually, Terry McLaurin's been a dog. Anyway, tangent over. Joe Mixon eating up touches in the second half. Even the passing game, he's been a threat. I mean, hell, we saw the week he put up 5 touchdowns. One of those was through the air. He had 58 yards. So even if you are slinging the ball around, you're not immune to Joe Mixon. Derrick Henry could say, oh boy, he gets a matchup. He gets a matchup. He's going to Los Angeles to play the porous Chargers defense. The Chargers had a great game against Miami. Like, let's not discount that. It was a great game. Came out, they hit Tyreek, they hit Waddle in the mouth. Tua couldn't do anything. They played a fantastic game. I do not trust them to stop an actually physical rushing attack like the Titans have. I just don't trust it. I mean, the Dolphins are kind of soft. They're kind of candy ass. They're flashy. They're fun, but they're candy ass. The Titans may be bad, but they're tough. That's one thing I will say about them. So Derrick Henry, I think, is in line for a monstrous day. Tony Pollard on the other side for Andrew. Talked about it with when I talked about Zeke for Raleigh. I don't think it really matters if one's taking touches from the other, especially against Jacksonville. I expect them both to probably have 15 to 20 carries apiece. Probably both will get a touchdown. I expect their production to be very, very, very similar against the Jaguars. And it kind of comes down to who's going to get that second touchdown because one of them's getting 2. We just don't know which one, and that's going to kind of make or break who gets the better end of the deal there. Nick Chubb has had a rough couple of weeks here. Yeah, 8 points in week 13, 6.9 points in week 14. I don't know if some monumental change to the Browns offense happened in week 13 against the Texans when they didn't score an offensive touchdown. I'm not sure what may have changed in that offense. I'm not sure what may have changed in that locker room. I'm not sure what may have changed in the play calling tendencies there. But it's weird that it happened at that specific week and at that specific time where some change may or may not have taken place. Once again, if anyone has any information on the change that may or may not have taken place in week 13 against the Texans when the Browns scored 0 offensive touchdowns, please let me know. I'm very confused about this trend, and I would like to know. Tyler Boyd, we talked about him. He's questionable. Looks like he was limited at practice Wednesday. I don't love Tyler Boyd in this slot, and I think John mentioned it last week. Don't love Tyler Boyd here. Jamar Chase is so good that you know, having Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins is nice, but the Bengals proved that they could survive against teams without them. So if there's even question marks on him, I don't foresee them playing them, at least not full time. Maybe limiting their snaps at least, or we kind of see like a semi-healthy scratch like we did with T last week. It's not that I don't like Tyler Boyd's game. It's not that I don't trust him to put up points against the Bucks. I don't know that he's going to play. And if not, we've got options down here. Adam Thielen is playing the number one secondary in the league. DJ Moore has a very favorable matchup against Pittsburgh. Could be a good option there. Cortland Sutton, the Cardinals stink. I was going to say, but we need to see if Russell Wilson's out. But does it matter? It does. Brett Rippon, as bad as Russell Wilson is, Brett Rippon is unwatchable. So it does matter. I lied. Amari Cooper on the other side. Once again, if anyone has any information on the Browns offense and what may or may not have changed in week 13 against the Texans when they scored 0 offensive touchdowns, please shoot me a DM, shoot me a text. Let me know. I'm just befuddled by what difference there could be in the past 2 weeks in the Browns offense that has led to Amari Cooper and Nick Chubb not producing fantasy points or real life points or yards or any just positive production at all. I mean, I don't know if it's a chemistry issue. I don't know if it's maybe it's an ethics issue, a legal issue, like the locker room. I don't know. It's very weird that happened on that day. Gabe Davis. I've talked a lot of shit about Gabe Davis this year. And I think I've kind of earned my right to. He had the one great week in week 5 where he, had the Randy Moss stat line. Having said that, I think this is a week to believe in Gabe Davis. He's been bottled up for a long time. It's a divisional game, Saturday night, prime time. I think the Bills. I think this is a get right game for the Bills. And if this is a get right game for the Bills, that means Gabe Davis is catching a long touchdown. That may be the only pass he catches that day, but it'll be enough to warrant putting him in your lineup. I am firmly a believer in Gabe Davis to get 12 points on the first play of the first quarter, maybe 5 minutes into the first quarter, and end with like 15. So that's my analysis on Gabriel Davis. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Had a tough week last week against the Vikings, but before that it was coming in tough week. He put up 10 points. It wasn't bad. It was just, not what he's been doing. 2 weeks before that, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week before that, 122 yards and 1 touchdown. And a little bit of Amon-Ra's, Mr. St. Brown, Mr. Sun God himself. A little bit of his woes came with Jameson Williams scored a long touchdown. Josh Reynolds scored a long touchdown. DeAndre Swift had a long catch. So there's production going on in the Lions offense. Wait, what won't stop, Riley? Going to live read. Oh, he's talking about the TikTok. There's production going around in the Lions offense. So that's why I'm not panicking. Obviously adding Jameson Williams is taking away some targets. The Vikings defense isn't good, so those targets were there to go around. With the defense that is as good as the Jets, I think those extra targets actually just open him up more. So got to worry about Jameson Williams, got to worry about Josh Reynolds, worry about DeAndre Swift, just to open up your main trustworthy target, which is Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'm not worried about Amon-Ra. I am worried about the Jets defense. Jets defense is very, very, very good. So that would be what I would worry about here. But I don't think we're going to see a repeat of weeks 12 and 13, where he went for 23 and 29 yards, respectively, in those games. But I also don't think we're going to see a semi-dud like he just dropped against Minnesota. The tight ends here are very interesting. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, probably your 3 of your best 5 tight ends in the league, for very different reasons though. George Kittle, obviously an incredible run blocker. Travis Kelce, just a magician with a football. Travis Kelce against Houston, I'm worried about. I'm gonna be real honest. Houston's defense is real bad. When the Chiefs start doing fuck shit and start doing like fucking around with teams and try to get cute, usually Travis Kelce is involved. So that's where I'm worried here. If they were playing a legit, good team that just had a bad defense, maybe not. But against the Texans, he might throw for a touchdown pass. He might have like a sneak for a rushing touchdown. I think something fucking weird is gonna happen with Travis Kelce in this game. That's my stamp. And I'll end with 15.8 points on the nose. Basically, I just added a point to his projections because I think it's a little low. George Kittle on the other side. I mean, what did he do last week? The Brock Purdy, 4.8. That's he's had the one big week against Arizona. That's it. He's had a couple other weeks with touchdowns sprinkled in. Actually against Kansas City, he had a really good week in week 7. So, it's George Kittle. He's got the potential to score, a touchdown, maybe 2, break 100 yards. He's got the skill set to do that. In Shanahan's offense, he's going to be just mauling dudes and springing Christian McCaffrey free. So, a very obvious fantasy-wise mismatch there. Real football, whatever. You can, depends on what you want, but fantasy, a giant mismatch between Kittle and Kelce. And then we get into the pair of Pittsburgh flex starters. Najee for Andrew. Najee's going to put up 10 points. I don't know why we even have to discuss it at this point. Well, I mean, it's not 10. It's between 8 and 12. That's the perfect Najee number. In fact, he's had 1, 2, 3 weeks where he has played and fallen outside of that range. 2 weeks he went below. Weeks 4 and 5, he went 7.4 and 5.1. And then in week 11, he had 2 touchdowns. And he got 25.6. Good week. Hilariously enough, you take away the touchdowns, there's 11 points. I understand that touchdowns are a part of fantasy. Just very funny that his actual on-field production was the exact same. It's just that the Steelers decided to score touchdowns that week instead of, kicking field goals and punting. So if the Steelers decide to score touchdowns this week instead of kicking field goals and punting, Najee Harris has a chance to not fall within that range, but odds have shown that he will fall between 8 and 12 points. On the other side, George Pickens will do anything but score 8 to 12 points. 2.8, 5.4, 13, 11. There's 1. 4, 15, 13, 16, 9. There's 2. 0.7, 9.3. There's 4. 4 games where he fell between the very average Najee Harris range. The other weeks were really good. Are really, really bad. Less than 1, less than 5, or more than 12. So I didn't actually think that was going to work out that perfectly. I'm going to be really honest. I went into this with kind of this case built against George Pickens in my head, and then it just worked. That's insane. George Pickens is Kenny Pickett's favorite target. You got to start him. Carolina, not phenomenal secondary. Sneaky good game here. I talked about the Lions and the Bears and the Eagles being a sneaky good game. Another sneaky good game. Not good. Interesting. Interesting is a much better word for that. It's definitely not going to be good. The Steelers are not good. The Panthers are not good. Both teams kind of fun. And defense is not great. So we could actually see some points there. And if that's the case, 2 teams involved with that. I would also not be shocked if this game ended 6-3 in double and not double overtime. That doesn't exist. In overtime. So, having rambled on for 30 minutes about this game, it's been 15. It had been 30. The projections here have it this week 107 to 104 in favor of Charles, which would give him the victory. I am going to agree, not with the score, but with the V. Purely I went through and broke down 7 players because I didn't do defense and defense and kicker. Which I may. Nick Folk versus Justin Tucker is a just kicker powerhouse. Um, and Andrew still has the Bucks defense in against the Bengals, so I expect that'll change in the next coming days. I'm gonna go with Charlie as my prediction here. Purely because there's two. There's not two. There's one reason. It's the King. It's Derrick Henry. He's playing the Chargers. Chargers just proved that they were maybe good. They weren't. The Dolphins were just bad. I think the Titans are pissed off about the Jaguars win. They are going across country, which makes me a little worried. But that game's at 4:25, which means it's a 1 o'clock kickoff for them. Right in the right smack normal. Derrick Henry may put up 40 points. And that's the reason I'm going. The thing that scares me about picking Charlie is that whatever that change was in week 13 against the Texans, that the Browns suffered, may be so impactful that Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper are fantasy irrelevant. But I'm gonna stick with my gut. I'm gonna go with Charlie, meaning your fantasy Super Bowl matchup will be Charlie versus Tim. Just the most improbable thing we've ever heard of. I mean, just insane. Charlie, I mean, not unexpected that he would be there. He was a 2 or 3 seed most of the year, if not all of the year. Tim making it would be insane. Raleigh not making it would be insane. A little bit predictable after the injuries occurred. But still insane based on where his team was at one point this year. Now that, I feel like I'm setting up for the finale here, and I still have 3 more games to talk about. Also, this is at 37 minutes. I still have 3 more games to talk about. Jesus Christ, wrap it up. Tim versus Charlie in the finals. It's going to be so exciting to watch. I can't wait to watch their friendship fall apart. Well, now let's get to what everybody is actually here for, and that is the consolation bracket. Now, I talked a little bit about the setup at first. John, Wade, and even Trevor to a degree, you're safe. Cameron, if you win, you're safe. If you lose, it's gonna be tough. Me and Ashley are, one of us is going there. Probably both of us. But one of us for sure. At this point, with the way that the points break out, I think the only way either of us make it out of the last place match is if Cameron loses, which he is playing Trevor. Trevor's team is very good. Probably should have been a playoff team. In fact, we've done the math. Should have been a playoff team. Should have been a 1 seed actually. So playing against what, the makeup of a 1 seed here. So Cameron losing not out of the question. But I mean, let's just get into the matchup. So we'll start with 1 versus 6. That's me versus Wade. Projections here have it Wade winning 109 to 106. This is going to be a little bit difficult, a lot of clicking back and forth because we don't have these matchups in the fantasy app. In fact, I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, well, I paused it and I fixed everything. I put a big message in Discord. You probably are read it at this point already. But the app should now accurately reflect that I'm playing Wade and Trevor is playing Cameron. Ashley and John will still have to manually check their scores because there's no room in the bracket to add them to it. But at least it makes it easier, kind of, for most people. Definitely makes it easier for me to sit here and read the matchups and look at the scores. And projections. Definitely makes that my job a lot easier. So the 1 versus 6 matchup. Once again, I'm playing Wade. I'm getting back into it. On paper, the Justin Herbert trade looked really, really good, and with Kyler going down, it is now fully necessary. In fact, just for shits and giggles for Trevor here, I'm gonna go ahead and move Kyler to the old IR slot. there. I'll do it on my phone because it's easier. Just to have him there, just for my own satisfaction. Anyway, so Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, both involved in a trade. Trevor Lawrence coming off of his best game as a starter in the NFL. No other way to put it. The Tennessee defense was really, really bad. As impressive as it was much more impressive on TV. So coming off of 33.42 fantasy points, 368 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, added another so good touchdown run. That shit was so sick. And then, the other piece of the Justin Herbert trade was Miles Sanders, who's going 29, 10, and 28 in his last. He's got 5 touchdowns in his last 3 games. 2 of those games he put up 143 and 144 yards. So just dominating performances out of Miles Sanders, which you can expect on the best rushing offense in the National Football League. Justin Herbert luckily gets the team that Trevor Lawrence just put up 33 points on. He gets the Titans. I talked about them a little bit being more physical up front. The secondary is bad. Like, there's not fixing that. You can get physical, but they're bad. I do think this game kind of creeps into shootout territory just because I don't see a way that the Chargers stop Derrick Henry, as I mentioned. And I really don't see a way that the Titans stop Herbert, Allen, Williams, Eckler, Everett. I'll throw that one in there for my own satisfaction. So, and on the other side, Trevor Lawrence, coming off of his best game, gets to go right into the Cowboys. The second best defense in football, the best defense in fantasy. So, that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. I don't think he repeats that performance, obviously, because it was an all-time career performance. But I could see that game getting out of hand early and getting some garbage time touchdowns there. 16 to 20 point game for him. Justin Herbert, I think, is on 30 watch. But I kind of been saying that all year about Justin Herbert. It really hasn't happened, and he had a very great game. I mean 367 yards, which was that. Yeah, exactly 1 fewer yard than Trevor Lawrence had. Just couldn't finish it up in the end zone. Eckler ran one in. He threw for 1 touchdown on the way to beating the Dolphins. So ton of yardage, just didn't get in the end zone. That's what held him back last week. Jonathan Taylor makes his return to the lineup. Feels like it's been a million years since I've seen Jonathan Taylor on my fantasy team, and it's been 2 weeks against the Vikings, who just got crushed by the Lions. They didn't do a lot on the ground though. I mean, Justin Jackson had a touchdown. Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift were pretty limited though. But the Vikings defense is not good. So and neither is the Colts offense outside of one player, who they hate giving the ball to. So I expect more of the same from Jonathan Taylor, probably between 10 and 15 somewhere. Has been kind of his threshold all year when healthy. Maybe. The one thing with Jonathan Taylor is at any point he could go for 80. I mean, that's like it's the whole reason. Like when he's on my team, I have to sit there and watch the entire game. It doesn't matter how much time is left. It doesn't matter what the score is. At any point, he could go for 75 and a touchdown and flip a game in a fantasy game just like that. Bam Knight, for some reason, is the starter in New York. I guess he's looked better. He's looked more explosive. Didn't see that coming. He sat on my bench last week. But he'll be starting this week. Gets the Lions, who we talk shit about the Lions defense. They've sneakily been playing pretty okay. Not the worst defense in the league. Their secondary is not good. But they've been playing decent defense. I mean, good enough to win games. And that's what matters in the NFL. But I still expect Bam to have a pretty solid game, especially once again if Mike White can play the whole game and keep it open for him. If Zach Wilson gets in there, there's not a jet I want anywhere near my lineup. Ramondre Stevenson coming off of the injury last week, didn't practice on Wednesday. If he does go, I expect him to put up 20 to 25 against the Raiders. If he's ready to go and even close to 100%, I expect some monster production out of him. But that's the real question mark is he going to play? If he doesn't, who we have down here? We got J.K. Dobbins available. We've got, oh shit, I didn't even see. I forgot he had Justin Fields. Um, which is, it's tough to play that against the Eagles. Going off on another tangent here, but tough to really trust that against the Eagles. But like I said, look ahead spot. Justin Fields is really really good. So very interested to see which direction Wade ends up going there. Either way, I don't think it's quarterback that's carrying his team this week, so I don't really think you can go wrong either way, unless Justin Fields puts up 40 points again. So so that's your running back breakdown. Miles Sanders against the Bears is really really scary. Coming off of those performances, 2 of the last 3 weeks, getting a bad Bears defense, Miles Sanders could be scary. Could be the death nail. Talk shit about him all the time, and traded him away. Could end up coming to bite me right on the ass. Zay Jones finally paid off for Wade. His good week before this was Baltimore. I don't believe he's in the starting lineup. May have been on waivers at that point. Against Tennessee last week, 77 yards and a touchdown. Obviously stacked with Trevor Lawrence there, was great. But same thing that I said about Trevor. This is not the Titans defense. This is this is a big boy defense. So I don't necessarily expect that kind of production again. In fact, I don't know. Maybe we go Jacoby Myers against the Raiders. That's really the only option unless you want to slip Chris Godwin in there and go with someone else in the flex. Jacoby Myers is the only real option, and then you got to tell yourself that you started Jacoby Myers over Zay Jones. Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football. Playing against the best secondary in football, best fantasy secondary anyway in the Colts. But it's a noon game for Kirk. Justin Jefferson is so fucking good. 22-30. The dud against Dallas where they scored 3 points, and then 24-15-27 last week, put up 27 points without a touchdown, 223 yards on 11 receptions is just insane. It reminds me a lot of that Julio game a couple years ago where he went for like 280 and didn't score. But just god damn, he's so good. On the flip side, for my receivers, Mike Williams finally back, finally healthy. Put up 20 points last week, 116 yards and a touchdown against Miami. I honestly expect very similar production against the Titans. The only thing that worries me about the Titans is their defense is so bad that everybody else might score too, leaving a little bit left on the bone for Mike. But God, I love having Mike Williams in the lineup. CeeDee Lamb, talking about how much I love Pollard and Zeke this week against the Jags. The Jags also can't stop the pass. I mean, their defense is just not great. And CeeDee Lamb is really good at playing football. Only had 33 yards last week against the Texans. The Cowboys kind of struggled the whole game with that. Jesus Christ. Hear that fucking rain? But the 2 weeks before that, 71 yards and a touchdown, 17 points. Week before that, 106 yards, 14 fantasy points. So that's kind of the range I'm expecting out of CD, somewhere between the 12 to 16 type range. Against the Jags, I see him scoring a touchdown. Hopefully that game turns into a shootout. That's the only way I really have hope for him putting up like really good fantasy numbers. So yeah, my analysis there. Oh, holy shit, we're at 48 minutes. I still have 2 games. Gerald Everett against the Titans too. Obviously coming off of Evan Ingram, this gets me just rock solid, just rock hard. Gerald Everett has been the most serviceable tight end I've ever seen. He's not great. He hasn't won a single game for me this year, but there's only one that I can really point to where he lost me, and that was the Cleveland matchup where he had 1 catch for 2 yards. He's had a couple duds here and there with 3, 4, 5, but I feel like most tight ends have. And at this point, most people are kind of relegated to streaming tight ends. So at least have somebody solid in my lineup that I can trust to get 5, 6 targets a game. Feels nice, and maybe he breaks out the same way Ingram did. On the other side, here's one of the tight ends you can trust is Mark Andrews. Oh fuck, I said that. Holy shit. I forgot Lamar's out. 2.7, 7.4, 9, 9.3, 0, 0, 4.8, 0.4. Going all the way back to week 6 since he scored a touchdown. Week 6 since he's broken 10 points. Maybe Tyler Huntley can figure it out and get the ball to him. I mean, he's a damn weapon, but against a decent Cleveland defense, I don't really trust it there. That's going to be a mid off for the ages. Gerald Everett versus Mark Andrews. And then speaking of mid off, I say that once again. I gotta stop talking shit about Terry McLaurin. I love Terry McLaurin. He's so good. Playing the Giants, who they played 2 weeks ago, where he had 105 yards and a touchdown on the route to a 20-20 tie. So he's got production against the Giants in the past. He is by far Taylor Heineke's favorite target. Each receptions in that with Heineke in there. Love Terry McLaurin. Going back and forth between him and Mostert. I don't think I can start Mostert with the candy ass Dolphins going to Buffalo in a snowstorm. I don't think it's going to happen. And as far as Jamal Williams goes, he's been a touchdown machine all year. But DeAndre Swift finally looks like he's getting back up in form. Justin Jackson's taking touches. And they're playing a really good defense in the Jets. I can't bring myself to do it, which means this is the week he probably scores 3 touchdowns. So if you have him in your other leagues, go ahead and put him in, because I'm sitting him on the bench. Chris Godwin. Last matchup I played against Wade, Chris Godwin had 23 fantasy points. Since then, he's had 10 and 7. Before that, he had 16, 7, 10, 8, 12, 9, 9. Missed 2 weeks, and then 5 in week 1. So, having said that, I talked about Cincinnati getting up early in that game. Probably game script here is going to lend to slinging the ball, especially over the middle and in slants. So I fully expect Chris Godwin to have another big game. I mean, Wade's going to win this game. We all know what's going to happen. Justin Jefferson's going to put up 80 points. Justin Herbert is going to catch a flu in quarter 1. Jonathan Taylor is going to fumble at the goal line so that Matt Ryan can throw 3 straight incomplete passes. We know what's going to happen. I'm prepping for the duck. So game number 2. We have the 2-5 matchup here, which is John and Ashley, and this is the one I am gonna have to go back and forth on. So it may take me a little while. Actually, I'm just gonna be lazy, and just break them down one at a time, because I don't feel like jumping back and forth. So Mob Psycho 100 Gag. Starting lineup right now we have we have Aaron Rodgers in the lineup against the Rams. I mean, I get it, like Gino's playing the 49ers. Okay. I mean, I guess the Christian Watson stack is fun. So Christian McCaffrey's in the lineup, and he's really, really good at football. Playing a bad Seahawks defense. Seahawks defense started looking really good this year, and kind of the couple middle weeks, and then finally kind of regressed back to what they have been doing. Christian McCaffrey, I will go ahead and put down as a guaranteed 20 points. Put him on 30 watch. Put him on 40 watch. Christian McCaffrey should have a absolute field day against the Seahawks there. Travis Etienne laid a absolute stinker last week in a game where the Jaguars put up 36 points. He had 32 yards rushing. I don't really see how that improves this week against a better Dallas defense. I guess the only thing you can say why it would is because the Dallas also has a good secondary. So maybe they have to rely on it a little bit more. But that worries me for John there. AJ Brown, he's playing the Bears. I keep forgetting that Eagles are playing the Bears. AJ Brown, the good news, Ashley, is that John isn't playing me, so he might not put up 27 points. He may only put up 15 to 20. So that's good news. Last week 70 yards and a touchdown. Honestly, probably very similar performance. The Bears being so bad make me think that he could go for 120, 130, maybe 2 touchdowns. Monster week out of AJ Brown. And kind of the same for Chris Olave, who has not dazzled the last couple weeks, but he played the 49ers. He played the Bucks. Then he had a bye. The last time he played against the Rams, he's just kind of he's so limited by Andy Dalton. So limited by Andy Dalton. So, it's not that Chris Olave doesn't have the potential to put up 100 yards and a touchdown like he did in week 11 against the Rams. Is do I trust Andy Dalton to give him the ball? Luckily, he's playing the Falcons, who absolutely stink. But non-statistical analysis of that game, Desmond Ridder starting, and I could foresee that lighting a fire under the team and them actually playing well as a unit, not just the offense. So, stuff like that happens. And then I talked about Christian Watson with the stack quarterback position. Oh my God, John. I mean, yes. Yeah, I'm not really seeing any other viable options here. All right. You'd start Mitch Trubisky. Brock Purdy, actually. What did Brock Purdy do last week? Yeah, he had 21 points. He's playing a much worse defense. Just throwing that out there. Throwing it out there as a little thought. Once again, worst fantasy team in the league by far this year. Probably don't take my advice. And I'm just saying words out loud that when put together form a sentence that you have the option as a free American to listen to or not listen to. Christian Watson. He scored 8 touchdowns in 4 games? 7 touchdowns. Oh no, he had a rushing touchdown. 8 touchdowns in 4 games. Fully come alive, fully here. So definitely expect that out of him again. Going over to Ashley's team. Took a bit of a hit this week with Debo being out. There she is. Took a bit of a hit this week, and God, this quarterback matchup is Aaron Rodgers versus Jared Goff, and Jared Goff is the better quarterback. It's fucking the stupid part. Ashley refuses to leave the Kareem Hunt train. Which, I mean, yeah, just refuses to get off the Kareem Hunt train. And once again, something has happened in the Browns offense that is just bewildering to me of why they can't score points for the last 2 weeks. James Conner, he's really, really good, and they don't have an option at quarterback at this point. The matchup against Denver is tough. But the only way I foresee them scoring points is through James Conner. Riley, sorry, I don't believe in DeAndre Hopkins this week. James Conner is the answer for the Cardinals to have a pulse. And honestly, I don't think they will. I mean, I think that Kyler's out, Colt starting, Colt stinks. Cliff Kingsbury is going to get fired. The GM just stepped down with some medical issues. I think he was probably getting fired anyway. It's very possible the Cardinals just roll over and die. T. Higgins, just the bane of all fantasy owners last week, was taken off the injury report, played 1 snap that he wasn't supposed to play, apparently snuck on the field because he wanted to play, and got benched after that. Looks like he was limited at practice Wednesday. If he goes, I talked about Jamar Chase. I talked about what I think of of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd this week. I don't love him. But T. Higgins is good enough that if he plays, you got to start him. Jalen Waddle against Buffalo. Jalen Waddle caught 2 passes last week for 31 yards. Didn't catch one until the 3rd quarter. So it really just depends if the Dolphins can fix their shit. If the Dolphins can fix their shit, Jalen Waddle's incredible. If not, and then I mentioned Debo being out. TJ Hawkinson also. I mean, he's just been he's been a Najee Harris 8 to 12 point machine. It was so sick when he had 35 points though. That was such a sick game. Talked about Debo Samuel being out. Obvious replacements here for Ashley. Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy coming off a 3-touchdown game, best game so far of his career. 73 yards, 3 touchdowns, 29 points. But if Brett Rippon's going, you obviously can't start him. And if Russell Wilson's going, you may not want to start him. But like I said, it's very possible the Cardinals just roll over and die in this game. So, maybe that's what Russell Wilson needs to not look like a hot, wet pile of dangerous dog shit. The safer play is obviously Brandon Ayuk playing the Seahawks. Thursday night, kind of a double-edged sword here with losing the targets that Deebo would normally take, getting Ayuk in there. In 2 games with Brock Purdy, last week 57 yards and a touchdown. You just kind of trust him. Brandon Ayuk scored 2 touchdowns and had 15 points in week 11. That's hilarious, actually. So I would go with Brandon Ayuk as a safer choice. Jerry Jeudy is kind of a flashy play. I can't even see projections here because they're not, actually. Oh wait, yes I can. I can't see the total though, and I'm not going to do the math. Yeah, to me, John wins this game. I mean, he runs away. Which would likely, it's likely going to put Ashley in the Duck matchup against myself. So, third matchup. It's tough to beat a team 3 times in a year. That's what I'm going to tell Ashley. That's what I'm going to tell myself. We'll see how that plays out. The final game, finally. After rambling for 1 hour, 1 minute, and 34 seconds, we are to the final game, which is Cameron versus Trevor. Once again, if Cameron wins this game, he is out, and it is pretty much 100% me and Ashley. I think it's going to be anyway, but if Cameron wins, that pretty much eliminates all doubt. Projections here have it 109 to 108 in favor of Cameron. But as I mentioned earlier, Trevor's team very, very scary. The good thing here for Cameron is that Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, which are kind of the two-headed beast in this on this team, are playing New England. The defense has been a little bit shaky here lately, but it's New England. You kind of just trust them. They're playing that game in LA, so that worries me a little bit. If that game was in Foxborough, I wouldn't worry about those two at all. In LA, that does make me nervous. Not because of the crowd, but just, being out of the cold, being on the turf. Yikes, rest in peace. That still makes me a little nervous. As far as the quarterbacks go, I talked about Kelsey, I talked about Juju. Here's Patrick Mahomes now. Could be a weird game, but like I said, this game could be over so fast. Mahomes really doesn't have a chance to do anything, and he's been kept under 20 points the last 3 weeks. Now last week that was a 352-yard, 3-touchdown performance that was kept under 3 points because he threw 3 bad interceptions after they got up. I don't think the Chiefs have any problem obviously winning this game, but it's one of those where Patrick probably take a half off. Tua against Buffalo. Last 2 weeks for Tua have been not great. 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks against the 49ers. 145 yards and a touchdown against the Chargers, who somehow just bottled up the Dolphins offense. I mean, it was insane. So, and they're going to Buffalo in a snowstorm, which scares the shit out of me. And likewise, that obviously that affects Tyreek Hill. So the Tua and Tyreek dynamic here scares me. The only thing I'll say about Tyreek is obviously he had a monster game without Tua doing anything. He had 2 touchdowns, that 1 weird fumble, and then he had a 60-yard touchdown reception. So he still ended up with an incredible game, even though Tua kind of stunk. So he's proven he can do it. I'm not gonna rely on a touchdown or a return fumble touchdown, but he can break one play loose and get all the production he needs. The running backs here, I touched on Josh Jacobs playing New England. Rashad White against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense is good. They are a good defense. Rashad White is the receiving back. He gets targets. 5 receptions last week for 21 yards. It's just the Bucs are not explosive, so big touchdown runs, big plays. They just typically don't happen. Saquon has been he was so awesome at the beginning of the year, that him being just kind of above average the past couple weeks. Last week he wasn't good against Philly, but that's a good defense. And they got blown out. So I mean, you just stop running the ball. His slightly above average performance here have been kind of just left by the wayside, a little overshadowed. I expect Sunday night in a primetime divisional game, once again, kind of a playoff spot on the line here, that he shows back up, gets back in gets him a touchdown, pushes 80, 90, maybe even 100 yards, has a decent game. Keenan Allen. At the beginning of the year, when Cameron had Keenan Allen and Stephon Diggs as his wide receiver 1 and 2, it was terrifying. And if he had them all year, I think we'd be singing a different tune and talking about Cameron in a different game. But Keenan Allen didn't play for a while, but he is back now. Over 10 fantasy points in his last 3 games, 13, 17, 15. Justin Herbert's second favorite target, favorite wide receiver target. Austin Eckler still just dominating receptions. And a really bad defense in Tennessee. I talked about Mike Williams, I talked about Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen is a part of that. I think there's going to be plenty of production to go around where all 3 of them can have pretty decent two big days. And then Stephon Diggs against Miami. As much as I said I don't love Miami in this game, I love Stephon Diggs. The Bills are semi-used to snow, semi-used to the cold. And I think this is a get-right game for the Bills, meaning it's a get-right game for Stephon Diggs. And then getting into the flex, Tyler Lockett scored a touchdown on 4 straight games, I think. Holy shit, no, it is 6. He has scored a touchdown in 6 straight games. Not a whole lot of yardage production coming along with that, but he's scoring. Obviously a very tough matchup against the 49ers, but he's kind of Geno's guy in the end zone. So if the 49ers score, I expect Tyler Lockett to be a part of that. Nothing to blow you away, but he's going to be there for you. All of Christian Kirk sitting right there on the bench. And Devontae Smith. I talked about AJ Brown. Devontae Smith last week, 64 yards and a touchdown. The week before that, 102 yards and a touchdown. Short touchdown in 2 straight games. He's Devontae Smith. He's good. He scores touchdowns sometimes. There's not really a whole lot to say. I mean, he could be a wide receiver 1, but AJ Brown is just on the other side. So it's really hard to say what his production is going to be, just because if AJ Brown shows up and decides that he's going to take this game over, he will. So luckily the Bears will give up points. So I think, once again, kind of like what I'm saying with the Chargers here, there's plenty of points to go around Devontae Smith. There's plenty of points to go around. Looking at this, like I said, the website has it 109 to 108 in favor of Cameron. Looking at the matchups here, I think Cameron takes the win this week, saving him from a duck and making it the 2 teams that we all knew it would be, which is myself and Ashley. That is your week 15 preview. Went a little longer than I wanted it to. A little out of practice, got to keep it concise. But at least I figured out how to make the matchups work, so that's fun. Anyway, good luck this week, and see y'all next week for the finals.